Hi guys, Mike in the Woods here, and today I'm going to do a complete teardown and deep dive into my day hike kit. So as mentioned, this is my day hike kit. If you watched my very first video where I did a teardown of my bug out bag, I've made quite a few changes to this since then, and this kit primarily sits as part of my bug out bag, but is a self-contained kit for under 24-hour excursions. Its primary responsibility is as a mess kit and cooking kit, but has secondary responsibilities in the form of water purification and shelter. And it also has options in it for multi-day survival as well. So let's get into it. Alright, so the way this is designed is actually not my original idea. I watched a YouTube video quite a few years ago that gave me the rough idea of how this kit is assembled. However, I do have my own spin on it. I just can't claim the original idea behind it. So to start us off with the bag itself, it's the Condor H20 pouch. And I've attached a 2-point sling to it so that I can carry it on my shoulder when I'm walking around and not have to occupy one of my hands with it. So first and foremost, attached to the carabiner here, you'll see this sling bow. This is a sling bow I designed and 3D printed, and it comes with a removable arrow guide, so it can be converted between a regular slingshot and a sling bow. And if you're not sure what a sling bow is, it's basically a slingshot that's been modified to fire arrows. So basically this can fire steel shot, stones, or arrows. And as you can see, it's a bit bulky, but because it's made of plastic, it actually doesn't weigh that much. And that was sitting on, as you'll see here, a carabiner, which is just some crappy dollar store carabiner I got. It doesn't have to be very high in load bearing, just something that I can clip that onto, the slingshot. As you can see, it's got a whistle, and it's also got a flashlight on the end of it, which is controlled just by twisting the end. Just in case, I do get stuck overnight somewhere, I do have a light source, although this is for emergency situations only. As well, on the side, you'll see here, this is a Condor radio pouch, and inside is just a compass. It's got a little compass there. It's got a magnifying glass to start fires, signaling mirror to signal for help. On the front there, it's got a temperature gauge and a humidity gauge. Unfortunately, the temperature gauge is in Fahrenheit. As I do live in Canada, we use Celsius. So I did have a conversion on there to convert into Celsius at one point, but as you can see, it's worn off and I do need to replace that. Additionally, it does also come with a flint and striker, although that's my tertiary fire starting source, and I don't plan on using it, but it is just an extra way of starting a fire. So that's that. Now we'll get into what's in the very front pouch here. So this thing is absolutely jam-packed. There's no way I could fit anything else in here. So, although this kit isn't planned for overnight excursions, in the rare event that I get stuck somewhere and I have to spend the night, I have 2 heavy-duty garbage bags in there that can be strung together to form a very simple shelter from protection from the rain and wind. As well, they do serve a secondary purpose where, obviously, if you're hiking and make a bunch of garbage, you don't want to leave it lying around, so this lets me hike out with it. As well, for the shelter situation, I do have an emergency space blanket in there should I find myself having to stay overnight, and it gets a little cold at night sometimes. Got a metal pencil sharpener. For those of you who are a bit newer to the outdoors game, you might be wondering why I have a metal pencil sharpener in there. And the answer is you take a small twig or stick and you shave off little pieces inside the sharpener, and that helps you create some really simple and easy to make tinder for starting fires. And it's metal, so you can beat the crap out of it and it'll be fine. I've got my cutlery set in there. Most people opt for a titanium spork, which is understandable because it's a lot smaller and more lightweight. But I've used this simple stainless steel cutlery set for a few years now, and other than having to scrub some rust off it every now and then when I forget to dry it off before I tuck it away, it's lasted me quite well. And I've got this at the dollar store of all places. Like I went over in my top 10 Dollarama camping equipment video, if you know what you're looking for, the dollar store can be an absolutely great place to get simple camping gear. Here I've just got a simple fishing bobber, and you'll see why as I dig deeper down into that kit there. Right, just a small little guy, nothing crazy. I've got a fish stringer, pretty self-explanatory. For catching fish, you can string multiple fish up to the side of your boat or on the shore. I've got a little can opener. I've got my primary way of starting fires, which is just a lighter. I've got a small thing of duct tape here for emergency repairs, emergency cordage, or repairing any holes that appear in that garbage bag shelter system. I actually want to try doing an overnighter with just what's in this kit, so that'll be something to look forward to for this coming summertime. So here, this is my Altoids tin fishing kit, which was originally in the Rothco fishing kit that you've seen in my other previous videos. I just condensed it down into the Altoids tin. So it's got some hooks in there, some sinkers, some lures, what else do I got in there? Some bobby pins to make emergency fishing hooks. Just some really simple rudimentary fishing stuff. I need to actually practice fishing because I am pretty terrible at it. And the last thing that's in here, actually not the last thing that's in here, but one of the last things is my Esbit folding pocket stove, which is just a aluminum piece of metal that folds out like this. And you can stick either some of these fuel cubes that I got in there or some sticks, light them on fire, and cook your water or food on top. I like these because they're very simple, very hard to break because they're so simply constructed. And when it comes to survival, simplicity is a very key aspect to surviving when you're out in the wild. And I got a tea light candle in there as well for keeping my fire handy elsewhere. And the actual last thing that's in that pouch is my Coughlin ferro rod. So there is honestly no real difference between more expensive and more cheaper ferro rods, with the sole exception of maybe the more expensive ones have a different chemical composition that make it a bit easier to get sparks. But honestly, this one has worked just fine. And I can consistently start fires with it. So there's no reason you can't use a cheapo ferro rod. So that's it for the front pouch there. So now I'll get into the main one. To start us off, I've got this little baggie of random trinkets here. I've got an extra set of matches in there. I've got some wet wipes in there. I've got some instant noodle seasoning packs in there. I've got salt. I've got some Taco Bell hot sauce, some tea bags, but the most important thing that's in there is a full set of aqua tabs for water purification. And as you can see, I got quite a few of them in there, and that will be good for many, many, many liters of water. So next thing that's in there is a canister of gas. As you can see, this looks brand spanking new, and that's because it is. This and the associated stove that goes with it only went in my kit yesterday, so I actually haven't had a chance to take it out and use it. But when you're going out on excursions where you're not allowed to have open fires, such as certain provincial parks, or if there's a fire ban in effect, this is your go-to way of cooking and purifying water, is with gas stoves. Now obviously gas stoves are finite in their gas source, which is why I also have the twig burner stove. They sort of complement each other. This is faster and more efficient, but limited. So you can see how the two play off each other. Also in here, I've got a Rothco wire saw. Now Rothco rightfully gets a bad rap with some of their equipment. However, not everything they make is absolutely terrible. I've used this thing a few times and it's not actually showing any signs of wear or breaking. It does like to bind up a little bit, but when it comes to the size and weight, I mean, you should have these in every single one of your kits just because of how little space and weight they take up. Additionally, I've got a spindle of some cordage in here, which is just some orange mason twine for visibility reasons, and the spindle itself is just something I 3D printed. I've got some snare wire in here. Now, I don't ever plan on having to use this, but if I find myself in an emergency situation where I need to, obviously my survival trumps the legality of using it. But other than that, it remains in there, not to be used unless absolutely necessary. As well, folded up in this is my gas stove I was talking about. It's just a tiny little guy. You can see it here compared to my hand. And all that does is screws on to the top of the gas canister there. These things fold out to form a triangle that your pot can rest on. And then you use this little handle here to turn on and off the gas. And it just folds up in there like that. And you just light it up and start cooking. So like I said, this is more efficient and faster for cooking and getting water boiled, but your gas is a finite resource. So my plan is to use the twig burner when I can, and then only if necessary use the gas stove. And as you saw, it was wrapped up in this, which is just to protect the stove. It's just a simple microfiber cloth I got from the dollar store. As you can see, it's quite heavily used, which is good for cleaning and drying off the dishes, because as I explained with my cutlery, if you put away your stuff while it's still wet, it can and will get rusty. And in other situations, it can also actually be used to filter water of any debris before you boil it up and otherwise purify it. As for actual cooking stuff, I've got a little thing of salt and pepper. Right, so salt in the bottom, pepper in the other compartment. Then you just screw off the top and sprinkle it in. Pretty simple. Add some extra flavor to your cooking. Also got a thing of cooking oil. This is olive oil. I just refreshed this because I ran out from my last previous trips, which is good for making sure things don't stick to your pots, and as well, same as the salt and pepper, add some flavor to what you're cooking. And the last thing that's in here is about 100 rounds of 3/4 inch stainless steel shot from my slingshot. I'm actually debating taking this out because this is a lot of weight for something I'm not going to use all that often. And as I explained, slingshots can use stones or anything of similar size and mass once you run out of the steel shot. So I'm wondering if maybe I should just skip right to using stones instead of having the steel shot in there. Leave some comments in the comment section below. Let me know what you think. Should I keep this in there, or should I take this out and free up some of the weight? And the actual last thing I have in there, aside from my actual pots, is just a twig. As you can see, I've used it with that pencil sharpener, and this is just so I'll have a dry stick if I need to get some tinder started. Such as if it's raining or something. And it takes up almost no space, and it's very light. It's just a little twig. So as for what else we got in here, as you see in my review video, I've got the Stanley Adventure Camp Cookset, which is quite heavily used as shown by the charring on the pot. You know, it's standing up to quite a bit of prolonged use. The only thing that's starting to wear on it, as I explained in my review, is that the bolts that hold the handle in place are starting to loosen up a little bit. Not a huge deal, but I do have to be wary of if and when it decides it wants to completely come apart. So that nests inside of a stainless steel GSI cup, which is this bad boy here. When they sit inside the bag, they nest like this, which just lets you see how much of a tightly compacted kit this is when it's all packed together. And then the very last thing in there is just the lid for my Stanley cook pot. So that's it. That's the kit. Let me know what you think. Leave some comments in the comment section below. Let me know if you have any changes you'd suggest, anything you think I should add or remove. I'm always open to suggestions and learning.
And yes, I do know that I should replace this tab with a metal keyring. That's on my to-do list. Yeah, so as I always have to pester you to do, please like, share, subscribe, and see you next week, guys.